Hey everyone, it's David Barnett from davidcbarnett.com, the blog site, YouTube channel, iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play, Stitcher, wherever they'll have me, really, podcast and website, that where I talk about buying and selling, financing, and managing small and medium-sized businesses. Today, I'm really happy to have with me as guest Jaryd Krause from the Gold Coast of Australia. And Jaryd has a podcast, and he contacted me, and I listened to a few episodes. And Jaryd, your podcast is all about buying online businesses, money-making websites. Can we just for a minute talk about how you got into that? And then I've got a few questions here that I want to ask you about the whole topic. But why don't you give us a little bit of background on your story?
Sure. And thanks so much for having me on, David. Really appreciate it. It's great to come on, and I love chatting business as always. So I used to be a plumber, and how I got started was I just really hated my job. And I was just, because I was working so many hours, right? I was working like 60, 70 hours. And then I was driving an hour and a half to work and an hour and a half home from work. So commuting like 3 hours a day as well on top of that. And I was just drained and just knew there was something better. And what I used to do was I used to kind of run away. Like I'd kind of just quit my job and then I'd go traveling, because I was able to make a good bit of money from doing so many hours. And in Australia at that time, we had pretty good exchange rate, and I made a bit of money from it. So I just quit and I go over to overseas traveling and blow it all on traveling, and travel for 6 months or so, not working, or maybe longer, 6 months to a year. And then I'd normally come home with my tail between my legs and have to go to work again. And there was one time that I decided to go traveling, and I did Europe, and I did like 16 countries in Europe in a van with some friends. And I ended up, was like, no, I'm not going to go home yet. I'm going to go to Egypt and do some dive, become a dive instructor. And at that time I was like, I really slowed down and I thought, what am I actually doing with my life here? I don't want to be doing that whole 9 to 5 grind, hustle, hard thing. And I thought, I need a goal. So I set myself a goal to, what do I want to do? Is I want to travel the world, but I need to make money doing it somehow. So I went online, and this is what I literally did, David. I jumped online and I jumped on my keyboard and I typed in how to travel the world and make money online. And I popped up people that travel blogging. I'm like, yeah, that's me. I'm going to become a travel blogger. And so I started travel blogging and doing as much as I could. And I started making a real minute bit of money, but I realized that everybody that had a phone was a travel blogger and was my competition. So It was really hard to make money. And I started building websites, and I realized that was really hard, and I was failed at many websites. And then from there, what happened was, for some reason, I came across this thing that said 90% of all startups fail. And I thought, oh, well, 90% of startups fail. And this is when I was still working and trying to make my websites work that I was building. I thought, if 90% fail, why don't I go away and buy a website that's past that 90% failure rate, right? That makes sense. So I jumped on to see if I could actually buy websites, and I came across these different platforms that you could. And I thought, all right, I've got to teach myself how to do due diligence. Went away and did that, started buying one. I bought another one and another one and another one. And eventually I quit my job, and I was making more money from my plumbing job, and went away traveling. And then people started asking me, how do you do this sort of stuff? And it blossomed from there, really.
There's a couple of different things I want to point out about your story. And number one is that the whole journey started with the end. What does Jaryd want? Jaryd wants to be able to travel, but needs money to buy food and whatnot. And so you set your goal. This is what I want as far as a lifestyle. And then you said, how can I then do something in business to facilitate that? And for you, it was finding a way to make money online. And, your message about how 90% of startups fail is not a new message to this audience at all, because most people are here because they want to be in business, but they don't want to go through the pain and risk of the startup. And so choosing online, you mentioned your hour and a half commute each way. Choosing to be online, did it have to do with travel, or did it have to do with you living in a particular place that didn't have a lot of business opportunities?
Yeah, great question. And such a good point is that it started with the end in mind. And one of my mentors, he says, never change your goal, always change your strategy. And back then I didn't have this mentor, and I realized that I failed at so many things along this way to achieve my goal. And I just changed the strategy as I went. And I thought that was a really cool concept that I learned from him. And to answer that question of, was it just to cut out the travel of commuting time, or was it to be overseas somewhere and travel? And to be honest, it was just a travel to be overseas and be in different locations. And I just wanted to be location dependent, really. So I could have, I was a bit younger and I just wanted to go around and have fun. And that was the main reason, really. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's no reason why you can't just create the life you want, right? I mean, why have the life you don't?
Exactly.
So I get approached a lot by people who say, "Hey, I'd like to be on your YouTube channel. I'd like to be on your podcast." And, so I got an email from you, and then I checked out your podcast, and I'll tell you, the first podcast of yours I listened to was about how to finance the acquisition of an online business. And when I saw the title, my eyes kind of rolled a little bit, and I'm like, what's this guy going to tell us to do? Sell our houses or mortgage our houses or something? And then I listened to you talk with your guest about living below your means and saving money. And then I thought, here's a kindred spirit in the world. Because, as far as I'm concerned, like, if you're going to buy a machine or buy a business that has tangible equipment or inventory and things like this, it's okay to borrow money against stuff like that, because you're acquiring things that are going to help you make money, etc. But if there's nothing tangible there, and if you're going to be, taking a risk in business to any degree, you have to be in a power position. And that usually comes from speaking from a point of equity, which means cash. And this is what your podcast was about. And so I want to talk a little bit about that. Once you decided, I want to be location independent and be able to travel, and the way I'm going to do it is through online business, how long an arc was it from the time you made that decision to the time you could say that you had arrived to some degree?
Yeah. And I do agree. Some people just go away and leverage to the hills on, investments, and it's making you income, but you got no tangible assets there. And I think I wouldn't say it's not great for, like, you can go away and get finance. And I've got clients that have, but these are clients that have been in the scene and have their asset is their knowledge, and they know they can make it work and they're committed to it. So I wouldn't say you just have to disregard finance completely. It's possible. I do prefer people to buy it for cash, unless you're like 250% committed and you have at least a little bit of knowledge, or you're dedicated to paying for a mentor to get knowledge on how to grow it. And that is a massive asset. And to answer your question, it was, sorry, what was the question again?
Well, it was how long from the time you decided where you were headed to the point where you had enough income coming in from these online businesses that you could say, wow, like, I'm kind of there. I've got some income now.
Yeah, it was a very short time. I started learning, and at the end of, I think it was 2014, I bought my first business. By July 2015, I was making more from my plumbing job. Reason being is because I had some savings. So I had saved up a bit of money, and I was using it for the share market, and I just stopped it. I was like, I'm not going to use this in the market where it was. I caught the massive hit from the GFC, as most people did, and I still had some money left over, and I really wanted to invest that in different, somewhere else. And so I bought a business, a website. I bought it from Flipper, and I made good return. I was making 30% return on that per year. And then I bought a second website, and I bought it in, I think it was June or July. And when I bought this second website, I made 100% return on my investment in 7 months. And I found this one on Flipper, and we kind of bought it offline. And from that, I was making more so I had two businesses, and I was making more from my two businesses than I was from my full-time gig as a plumber. And this isn't obviously typical. Like, I'm not saying, and I say this to all my clients as well, it's not like I just had luck was involved, and I'd love to say I had all the knowledge and all the skills, and I was only in the game for like maybe 12 months and learning due diligence and buying businesses at this stage to buy my second one. So there was a little bit of luck in there that the business I bought did really, really well. But it's not a typical thing for people to just go, I'm just going to replace my income in 6 months. Well, it was probably a bit longer. It was probably like 9 months, right? But yeah, that's how that unrolled. And I was like, I feel that it's not just that time though that I had, that it wasn't just the 9 months, because people miss the background story. You know how people say, make like $10,000 in a day or whatever it is a common thing that I see. It's not that I didn't make $10,000 in a day. It's all the time before that. And there was a really cool thing that somebody told me about. There was a guy sitting on a bench who was painting people's portraits, and a lady came along and said, "Oh, this is like centuries and centuries ago." Lady came along and said, "Oh, can you please paint my portrait?" And the guy said, "Yeah, sure, I'll paint your portrait." Paints his portrait, and it's like 20 minutes. Most amazing, beautiful, immaculate portrait, spitting image, right? And the guy goes, "Oh, that'll be €200," and it was like centuries ago. And the lady said, "What? That's outrageous. How can you only took you 20 minutes?" And he said, No. This didn't take me 20 minutes. This took me my whole life." And the guy who painted that was like Pablo Picasso. I forget the person's actual artist's name, but somebody had been doing it for their whole life, right? So it's not that I just did click my fingers and this happened overnight. Like all that story of me learning how to, buy websites and start failing at websites and all that sort of stuff was a big contribution to that.
So trying to start those different website businesses, that gave you some basis of understanding, how to understand like the Google Analytics and all these other things that play a role. So when you went out to look at one, you knew what you were looking at. You knew what this information meant. Now, I know that the first two businesses that you bought ended up being successful for you, but you've also gone and looked at a whole bunch of other ones. So I want to kind of point the spotlight on the good fortune that you had in those first two deals, because how many other deals have you had to look at before you then found the third, fourth, or what have you? Because it's not 2 out of 2 is not really, it's not characteristic of what happens for most people, right?
Exactly. And it didn't just happen for me as well. To answer that question, I look at so many businesses and so many websites for sale. So to paint a picture, I'd come home from work and I'd get home at maybe 7 o'clock at night. I'd scoff some food in front of my computer and I'd spend from maybe 7:30, 8 till like 11 o'clock at night on my computer, go to bed, wake up at 4, 5 o'clock in the morning, drive to work. So I was hungry. Like I was like pretty dedicated to this because I was so committed to not having to work and be off hitting my goals. And this is a lot of my clients, and we all do it. We're human beings. We drop off the bandwagon. We forget our investment schedule or our schedule that I tell people to put down a schedule and actually put it in their calendar. Like I'm going to spend this time looking at websites or finding websites or doing research and due diligence, just like it's you going to the gym. You can't achieve your financial goals if you don't have that scheduled in. So for me, I looked at hundreds and hundreds of business. I spoke to so many sellers on the phone, all different crazy, hours of the morning from America and UK. I'm waking up at like 1 a.m. in the morning and then going back to bed and waking up at 4 a.m. to go to work and stuff. So I looked at a lot of businesses on a lot of different website brokers and marketplaces. I don't know exactly how many. I would love to let you know, but I think it's, if you go away and do research and due diligence on like anywhere from like 30 to 100 deals, you're going to find something that's good. And it's not just luck of finding something that's good. You're going to be able to start seeing things better because you get that knowledge and you learn so much from other websites and businesses you look at, and especially from the sellers you talk to too. There's quite a few, David, to be honest.
See, all the stuff you're talking about is just absolutely parallel to the rest of the world of people buying and selling businesses. And I sometimes get questions from people on the YouTube channel, or they'll send them in by email and they'll ask me specifically about online businesses. And it kind of makes me chuckle because really an online business is just a business. It just happens to be conducted online, right? And a lot of real world businesses have an online presence. In fact, most businesses now have an online presence. And so it's really just the same program as examining any kind of business. The key feature, though, I think that people are looking at when they think about a business that operates primarily from a website is that you don't have to be in a given place to make it work. You can be wherever you want to be. And so, Jaryd, you now work with people, helping them go through this same journey, right? Can you tell us about what the average person looks like who comes and wants to work with you?
Yeah, so initially it was just, I was helping people that were me, a younger version of me. So mainly tradies, mainly men who wanted to go away and buy a website. Most of the people that do come and work for me are people that are on the tools and they want to have a lifestyle where they can go away and travel like mine and hit, my travel goal vlogs that I had and all the stuff that I used to have on Instagram. And achieve like this fancy life of travel but not have to work. And then there's a lot of other people are probably majority now are people that do have families and do work, and they realize that the most valuable thing is you can always earn more money, but you can't earn more time. And they really want that valuable time with their family and their friends that they don't get. And that's what most of the people that I do work with are men who want to be able to provide for the family, but not slave labor type providing, and have more time with their children and their partners.
And so, what have you know since you bought your first website back in 2014, and since you started looking at the market, so probably a few months before that, what kinds of changes have you seen in the marketplace of people buying and selling these money-making websites?
Yeah, so from when I started, there was higher returns, obviously, and people were able to achieve, a 12-month, multiple, or a 24-month multiple. Now it's more like 24 to 36, sometimes even larger, depending on how valuable the business is. How large it is, how many hours are put into the business. So that's a massive change that I have seen. It's still an amazing ROI getting a 24 to 36 month multiple compared to standard investments or traditional investments, should I call it, which is most people call them. So there's some pretty big changes. And then I've watched a lot of the marketplaces and the website brokers have grown as well and started providing us with better analytics or a better platform to justify, or should I say, do due diligence on their platform, like looking at their financials, looking at their Google Analytics and all that sort of stuff. So the brokerage of this has gotten better, and then different financing options have opened up as well for particular websites too, or website investing. And I've noticed, obviously the online game changes so much, right? There's so many changes that have happened, like the Facebook changes, Facebook advertisement algorithm changes, the Google algorithm changes, how people went from crazy one way of marketing their business to a crazy other stream of, like, first it was like just hardcore content, link building. People were still doing black hat SEO, which hopefully doesn't really exist anymore, to a point where now everybody's doing a whole lot of Instagram videos, and it's more not just images but more videos, more audio, podcasting, and building their businesses that way. I could go on and list so many changes, but they're probably some of the key ones.
Okay. Yeah. And so, for the buyers, and here's the one thing that has come up over and over again, is that when you start to get into the bigger size websites, when you start to get into higher 5 and 6 figure price tags, what I have seen in some of the deals that I've helped people with is that they are still able to negotiate perhaps some seller financing, which is kind of normal in the regular business acquisition world. But one of the things that creates kind of a hiccup sometimes in a seller financing is if the buyer and seller are in 2 different countries. It creates a higher degree of anxiety maybe for both parties, because they think, what, if we were in the same country and there was a problem between us, we could go to court. But if you're in 2 separate countries, all of a sudden it adds this additional layer of complexity. Have you seen people working on this kind of problem? What are some of the creative things that people have done to work those things out?
I have actually done this myself where I did put a larger deposit. I think it may have been 70% down, and then and it's really good, as you know, because it helps you still be connected to the seller, and
Mhm.
they help you learn more about the business as you go until their payments are made, kind of thing. And that's a way an approach that I like to teach for sure. Is that, and then I bought 70% down, and then it was a US business, and I was paying Aussie dollars, but they wanted US dollars, obviously, and that's fair. So I just had to structure it with my bank to change it to US dollars and then transfer it into the broker's account first, and then they transferred it through to them. So it was a possible, but I guess the creative way to go about it is having contracts written up and agreements written up. In the contract for sale, have this written out, and you both signed it, and you're both legally liable. You're legally liable to one party receive, and B,
Mhm.
one party provide. That's probably the best case scenario, I believe. But how about you? Like, how have you sort of seen creative solutions? Because I'm interested in this. Like, what's
Well, at the end of the day, you can have all the paperwork you want. Um,
Mm,
it's going to come down to whether or not you're dealing with a party that is honorable and trustworthy. And so, these guys who sold you the business, they had a contract in place, but if you had not paid them and you controlled the website and the domains and all that kind of stuff, they would have to sue you in Australia, which would have cost them a lot of money. And so at
mm,
the end of the day, the only reason they probably agreed to enter into the deal was because they did a little bit of looking into who you were, and they realized, well, Jaryd seems like a good guy. We can trust him. He's putting a big down payment. There's no question that he owes us the money. Maybe there were some offsets in there for one thing or another. But at the end of the day, what I teach fundamentally is that it's a relationship has to be created. Because if the relationship doesn't exist, it's like you walk into a candy store, you hand over the money, you take the candy. There's no relationship, but there doesn't have to be because there's no risk. You got the candy bar, you paid for it.
yeah.
And anytime you have a relationship where you're going to pay for something over time, even if you borrow the money from the bank has to trust you, right?
Yes.
So they have a relationship with you. It's always about figuring out if you can do business with someone. And I would imagine now, with your online presence, the fact that you have a podcast, the fact that you've done other deals, if you were to approach a seller with an offer that included payments over time, you would be able to show your footprint on the internet to that person. They could check you out, but you could also give them the names of this other person in America and say, look, here's another guy I paid over time. You can reach out to him if you want to know if I made all my payments or not. And so you kind of build this credible profile as a buyer, as someone who's completed their contracts and done well. Just like the car auto lot is going to look at your credit score to make sure you paid off prior loans, right?
Sure.
It's credibility and trustworthiness and reputation, and to get back to the old terms about the 5 C's of credit, it's character, right?
Yeah, hugely. Yeah. And like you said before, that relationship you can have with the bank's not going to finance you unless you've gotten a certain amount of assets or equity in something. And this is something, if you do have the availability of funds to do this, is you could put this money in an escrow account and say, like, this is an escrow account. I'm good for the money. The money's here. And we've set up a payment structure plan that's going to get released to you over X amount of time. So that is a creative solution. You could do that through, and it depends. There's so many different escrow services online, which you already know. But yeah, I agree. Relationships, it's the most important.
Yeah, the escrow solution solves the problem of making sure you get everything you were supposed to get when you buy it, but it doesn't solve the problem of someone needing financing.
Yes, that's right.
Which is what payments to the seller over time does solve. Because if the business is the thing that's valuable, then the business should be what stands as collateral. And
Yes.
I have this conversation a lot where, the seller doesn't want to finance me. Well, is the business worth anything? If it's worth something and they're telling you it is, then they should be able to agree that it can stand as collateral for some financing.
Yeah,
No,
that's right.
yeah, yeah. No, it's sellers, they want everything, right?
Yeah, and I mean, because you've been a broker for so many years, like the amount of people that come to you and like, I want to sell it for this amount, and you must be there just going, okay, like let's get real here.
Well, you talked about the months of payback, and so in traditional business we talk about multiples, and we're usually talking about annual figures. And in the one thing that I have seen quite often is in the online business space, people are talking about months.
Yep.
And so you're talking about taking maybe 24 or 30 months or 36 months to get your money back out of an investment. To me, internet time moves at a different speed than the rest of the world's time. Because if that business is heavily dependent on some of these algorithms like Google or Facebook, those things could change. All of a sudden, traffic can drop. Have you gone through that with one of your clients, or have you seen that yourself, where something has changed outside your control that has just caused a sudden change in the traffic and the volume?
So for myself personally, I haven't had any drastic changes in traffic and volume. I have had where I've had a business where I've kind of just had not put as much energy into it because I'd have other things going on and other things that were making more money and stuff that I was more passionate about, whatever it is, that a lot of competition had come in and it affected that business to a certain aspect, but no massive changes myself personally. I have seen it happen though, and it does. And you're so right and on the money there that it can change like this. And this is why you need to have really good due diligence put in place to make sure the SEO, which is search engine optimization for everybody listening, is how people search for things on the internet, and how if you have good SEO, your website can get ranked higher on the list, like the search engine, sorry. And so if you're really good at doing your research in SEO, you're going to be able to pick what is happening if it's got good SEO, and you can only sort of predict what Google and Facebook and that's going to do. But if you're got some good solid foundations, any sort of algorithm changes, it shouldn't affect you too drastically. And there's just some common things that you should have on SEO for your site to make sure that, Google's not just going to rock the boat too hard. But in the past, because the internet, has had changed so drastically and so quick that people just didn't know what was going to happen, and Google didn't really even know what people wanted as much as they do now with the data they have. So that's why those changes were so drastic, and I dare say they shouldn't be as drastic in the future. And I've still got my fingers crossed, because who knows as well.
Well, yeah, I've heard of, for example, at one point in time, people used to sign up for affiliate programs, and they would use Google AdWords to advertise their affiliate link. And they could buy the AdWords so cheaply that they could actually make money doing this. And then Google came along and said, no, you can't do that anymore. And just like that, their business was turned off. And so you're right. I think the rate of change should start to slow down as they figure things out. It would seem to me that would make sense. Let's talk about motivation, because you've talked with many, many different sellers of websites. And so if somebody's got a website that's making them money, why would they want to sell it? What are some of the most common motivations that you're hearing from people that are selling?
Yeah, I was talking about this yesterday. So some of the most common ones are, you've got people that just want to cash out and get the money. And this is, a lot of people are skeptical when they come to buying a website. Like, why would somebody be selling it? There's got to be something wrong with it, right? And that's more so not the case at all. It's more so people do have this business, and they either want to sell it to put it into a bigger business and grow a bigger business, or they already have an existing business and they want to sell it so they can put this money into that bigger business and make more money from that capital. And I see that's the case most of the time. Does that mean that you should just trust that the business is absolutely awesome and amazing, hell no. We've still got to be really good at doing our research and our due diligence. But I find that's the most common motivator. But I've spoken to people that have like wanted to get money, David, for surgery, or wanted to get money. I was speaking to a kid a fair few years ago now, that wanted to sell a business for a bird cage, drop shipping business. And I said to him, why do you want to sell it? And he said, I need to go to college. And I was like, okay, cool. So it's quite diverse and you speak to a lot of different people, but the main motivator is they do just want to cash out and reinvest that money. And with motivation, what I was saying yesterday is that it's great to understand somebody's motivation, but with one motivation, there's always a level deeper on motivation. So for example, that person or that kid that wanted to sell their business that's selling bird cages so he could go to college. If I had known what I know now back then, I would have asked, so how much is college? Like what does it cost to go to college? And say that business is worth 60K. I could have, and he said, oh, well, college is 50K. I could have offered him like 55 or 50K and work out a better deal because I understood more of his motivation. I think that's great for everybody listening, is that, to really dig deeper. And it's kind of a scary thing to do when you're just new to the game, and you will get better of it. But when you do get more courage and more confidence in this, you can start digging deeper on the deeper levels of motivation. I think that's really important to do so, especially on the higher end listings.
Would you say that there's a lot of businesses, websites that make money for sale that are not full-time pursuits of their owners?
Yeah, hugely. Yeah, it's especially deals under the 100K range and even 200K range. They've either got a job and they want to sell this and buy a bigger business, or sell it and put it into another business and then get out of the job. Yeah. And then there are those people that do work and they haven't given the business the attention it needs, and they've just sort of like, I want to get rid of this because they feel it's not going to go anywhere, but they just don't know where to take it to get it to the next level, which is the best sort of deal, really.
When I was a business broker selling, real world businesses,
bricks and mortar
here locally, one of the number one reason why people wanted to sell was burnout fatigue. That was the number one reason. They were bored, burned out, they were tired of it, they didn't want to do it anymore. And for almost all those sellers, their business was their full-time thing. And from the people that I've worked with who have come and talked with me about selling their online business, there's kind of a new category that I've observed, and I'm going to call it opportunity cost. So, for example, I actually spoke with someone in Australia about 3 months ago, and they had an online business related to education. They've been working on this business for the past 3 or 4 years. They've always gotten to this $55,000 to $70,000 kind of net earnings range for themselves. Here's the problem. It's a full-time commitment to make it work. And the guy was like a web developer. He could have been earning 6 figures working for somebody else. So for years, he put everything he could into this business to try to figure out how to get it up to where he needed it to be. He couldn't figure it out. And he just said, you know what? I can't stay here earning 55 to 70 grand. I need to go over there and earn 130. They're demanding people like me. I've got the skills. I can go get a job. So I want to sell this business. And, it made perfect sense because he had come to realize that his business was not, in fact, an asset. It was a liability because it was taking up his time and earning him far less than his skills were worth. And I've got to imagine that this is something that many people come to a realization, especially, your example where you tried to start an online business and you couldn't quite get them to go. Sometimes that they do launch, but they don't launch high enough. And if they're taking all your time, it's still not a good investment when you start to think about what your time is worth.
Yeah, and a lot of people forget or get really caught up in the money. And what I see, the best move that this person in Australia has done, or if they did do this, is that yes, they can go away and make more money, or probably the same amount of money, right? 130, being a developer, and then having that money they do get as an opportunity cost, like you said, go into another investment where they don't need, they could have just put it into a bond, or, they could have given it to like a fund manager or whatever it is. that's going to make money itself without them having to do it. But the thing that I see that they gain the most, and it's really important, I feel this, is that there's less stress on themselves, and stress actually kills us, right? That's what we die from, is stress in the body. And this, like, a lot of the guys that come to me like, I want to make all this money and do all this sort of stuff and Ferraris and Lambos. I'm like, man, like, you may not get it yet. Like, stress is like the goal. It's like, you know how I was talking about motivation before? Like, my motivation was to travel the world and make money online. But really my main motivator was to not have stress, which means travel and make money online. And I think a lot of people forget like how bad stress is. And if we can relieve ourselves of that, like, let's do it. Like, let's put our stupid ego aside of like, hey, I own my own online business here. I'm killing it. And my ego's getting, boosted because I've run my own show. But if I can take a step back and go, oh, I'm actually less stressed and a far better lifestyle because I work for somebody else, then that's cool as well, right?
Well, yeah, and I think that owning your own business can deliver that less stressful lifestyle. I know what you're talking about this trap where if you earn more, you just commit yourself to more fancier toys and all this kind of thing. And I don't know. I think that it's about discipline and control, and about knowing what that end goal is. I mean, for me, one of the biggest reasons why I developed the business that I have today is I didn't want my children to go to daycare. So I said, how can I use my skills and talents and knowledge to create a business that allows me to be home at 3:00 every afternoon so that the kids can come here instead of going to daycare? And so then I, just like you with your traveling the world goal, I worked backwards from there. What do I then have to do to create to deliver that which I want? And so, and I'm happy that it's worked out. And I'm happy that the kids get to spend their afternoons with me, even if they go to their moms afterwards. So it's,
It's the best deal.
Hopefully makes them happier when they're adults and less stressed out.
Oh, I have no doubt the best thing you can give your kids is love, right? Because that's going to conquer all stress. And for the guy who, and don't get me wrong, for the guy who was thinking about going back to a job and being a developer, he's still got more options. You don't have to just choose work or the business. What I would do in my situation is I'd be like, all right, I got to suck it up. And how can I get a mentor or a business coach to help me grow this? Because I get to this level, like you said, 50 to 70K, my knowledge can't get me to the next. So if maybe they stuck in there and pay like 10, 20K a year or whatever it is for a mentor or a business coach, or JV with somebody such as yourself to help you grow it, over a certain time frame, it's a win-win for all parties. And I know for myself, when I've worked with other people, or even when I've just hired mentors, like my shoulders have become more relaxed and less stressed because I'm like, all right, I've got faith and trust and confidence in this person that's going to help me get to the next level. If I just do everything they tell me, how can I lose? Then it starts up to me to have the responsibility to make sure I put in the work and don't just pay and do nothing.
Jaryd, it's been great having you on the show. If people want to find you online and learn more and tune into your podcast, how can they find you? What's the easiest way?
Yeah, awesome. So if you just go to buyingonlinebusinesses.com, you can find me there, or just type in my name in Facebook, Instagram, Google, Jaryd Krause, JARYDKRAUSE. And you can find me on all those channels and my website. And I do greatly appreciate you having me on board, David. It was a really good chat. I kind of wish we could have gone a little bit longer because it was so good.
Well,
I know we can't just do that.
We'll just have to have you back sometime. That's all.
I'm down.
All right.
Thanks so much.
And just a reminder, everyone out there, regardless of if it's an online business or a real world business, if you want to learn more about buying businesses, just head over to businessbuyeradvantage.com, where you can learn about all the stuff that I have put together on the topic. And with that, Jaryd, we'll see you later.
Thank you. See ya.